This is the third video in this series covering chalk and charcoal portrait. So the first video we blocked in all of the shapes. Second video we added a range of values across the image. So we roughly captured the image in terms of starting to develop modeling. And this video is going to just be a process of refining that modeling, so starting to think about some of the medium forms, not necessarily going into complete detail just yet, but starting to develop things and make things a little bit more complex than they already are. You can sort of see in around the eye things are quite simple, the cheeks starting to suggest how much it turns, but it's not super refined. In terms of the background, we'll probably leave most of the clothing for now, roughly as it is, and just focus in a bit more. We might render a bit of the background around the head, but mostly just kind of thinking about developing these individual forms, working our way gradually across. In terms of materials, I've just got my HB charcoal that I've been using the past 2 sessions, my sanding block to keep my charcoal sharp as I'm working, kneadable eraser, and a mahl stick, which is my long mahl stick I've got propped up against my easel. And that's just to make sure my hand can stay off the charcoal as I work. So yeah, we can get started. As I say, I'm going to work sort of roughly left down to right, just because it feels a bit more natural, but you can work at this stage of the drawing, you can work any direction you like. And a lot of it, as often is the case, will just be sort of smoothing out what we've got there. So you can darken things, you can increase form and smooth out at the same time, sort of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So using the eraser rolled into a point, start to give a little bit of texture to that eyebrow. We will do a final pass of detail over though. So it just feels a little bit too dark, just in there. If you need to make any adjustments to shapes, this is a good time to do it as well. So these glasses were not quite the right shape. Going to curve down a little bit too much. Just want to pull that back slightly. Also don't quite angle in. On that side. So I'm just working on these glasses because I want to make sure I've got the right shape blocked in for this lens. It's not something I want to have to make adjustments to later on. So with this lens as well, that I have to bear in mind there's a sort of slight warping of the image behind. The lens, which is something, if you're ever working with glasses, something to bear in mind. So we want to give a slight sense of that. It'll make the lens seem more realistic. That just requires reasonably sort of careful observation more than anything. Casting a little bit of a shadow down as well. Now that I'm more definite about the general shape, I can go in and darken. So that's starting to look, you can see it's just starting to feel a bit more detailed, the front of the face there. But it's not as detailed as it could be, partly because this background right next to the face is a little bit too messy, essentially. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time evening that out. And the best way to even it out is wherever it seems too light, add a bit of tone, obviously with a sharpened point. You can see already that's starting to make it feel more even. Can help a lot to blur your eyes when you're doing that, so when you're trying to even something out, blur your eyes. Don't press too hard ever, so you kind of want to gradually build tone up. You can see it doesn't take too long. Just pushing the forehead forward slightly there. Adding that lens behind. sharpening my charcoal. You want to always keep it sharp as much as possible. And just carry on with this rendering. So you can see it's a gradual process. The more you can sort of restrain yourself and do it gradually like this, you'll find the more efficient your drawing becomes, because you won't have to be going backwards and forwards too much. So drawing a little bit more like the tortoise than the hare is preferable. And the more you draw, the more you can sort of stay out ahead of anything that's going wrong. It can be harder in paint to do that because things can rapidly change when you're painting, but you're drawing in charcoal this way, things happen quite gradually. So you can see that smoothness just helps to create a slightly better platform for this front of the face here. You can add a sense of this shadow above the lip, so a slight growth of the moustache, but I don't want to go too heavy with it. And there's also a slight sense of, or at least I want to play up a slight sense of a reflected light in that nostril. Charcoal's gone blunt again, so I'm just going to sharpen that. So I can at this stage start to soften edges out a bit. We'll be looking at edges in a bit more detail in future sessions, but one of the main things that starts to make a drawing feel more complete are more sophisticated edges. So things like that lip, which was a little bit too harsh, and just slightly softened off, makes it feel more realistic. So with this form of the cheek, I'm thinking about, it's a sharper edge down the bottom here, and then it sort of rounds softly up into the top of the cheek here. So for now, I'm going to keep that bottom edge quite sharp and spend time rounding the form upwards, because it's sort of turning up towards the light. It's always important to think about where the light source is, the nature of the form, and then how it's sort of as a consequence how it responds to that light source. It also goes a bit darker in that top right portion, so I want to get that in. Makes it feel like a slightly sort of more acute angle change there. a shadow being cast by the glass frame of the glasses. Kind of brings us back up here. I'd also like to soften that shadow underneath the beanie. Sharpening again there. So once we kind of have that roughly in place, shadow here, we can then kind of look at this brow here and how it rolls up as well. So in this case it's sort of rolling up in a different direction, and it's sharper on, but still again sharper on the bottom here. See how gradually I'm working, so it's not, not doing things too rapidly. I'm working nice and light. Holding the charcoal right back at the base of it. Too bad. Just want to soften that out a little bit as well. And then I can go back in and just want to adjust sort of straighten out those glasses slightly because they got a little bit wonky. But they need that highlight on their edge. Top edge as well. So I've kind of flattened the kneadable eraser into a blade. Just allows me to do a slightly sharper edge. If you kind of shape it into a point, it tends to flatten out. So I can sharpen my charcoal again, and we're nearly there for this session of the drawing. We've worked our way across. We sort of had this lower lip to do and a bit of a little bit more of the cheek. But we're not going for a total finish, we're just trying to get these forms to be a bit better developed. Can also just generally darken that lower lip because the local tone of the red is kind of inherently darker than the light of the skin. Just kind of appears a little bit. Appears lighter because it's brighter, but when we're transferring things into black and white, we want to think about the actual value of it. So nearly there with this. We got down to the chin now, so we can start to just kind of develop the chin turning out of the shadow underneath the jaw. Can just go back up, I just want to smooth out. The ear's not going to be super rendered, but we'll do that at a later date as well. The main thing we're focusing on is this sort of the central aspect of or the most important sort of focal point of the face, which is the front of the profile. Make sure all these forms are working. And finally, so we just want to soften off this back edge. Near the neck. Maybe just darken this slightly, it feels a little bit slightly too extreme. We'll amend that a little bit in the next session when we kind of further refine these details. And that's it for today. So we'll call it a day on that. You can see it's a lot more, already looks a lot more developed than it was, which is great. So about this level of finish is what you're looking for at this stage of the drawing. Next time we'll be adding the white highlights, so starting to just kind of push some of the highlights a bit, where necessary, and they're going to be quite localized. But this gives us a really good platform to work from. Once we've got those highlights in, we can go through and kind of carry on further pushing things and sort of developing the drawing as we want it to be. But yeah, that's it for today. As always, you can follow our channel on YouTube for videos from myself and fellow instructors. And if you click the link through, you can look at the courses offered by OCAD, where you'll be able to receive actual tuition from us, from myself and all the other expert teachers. But yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you guys next week.